Welcome, everybody, to Drunk Dudes in a Gun Room. Let me tell you, it has been a week, but I am happy to be back on the air and ready to do it. So today we have got Paul Zolman. Paul is an international best-selling author of The Role of Love. Let's welcome Paul Zolman. Hey, how's it going, Paul?
Good, Don. Good to be with you today. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
No problem. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Don, I grew up in a childhood of abuse. And so with that childhood of abuse, I always tried to obey the rules. And with that type of mentality, I eventually liked numbers, got into accounting. Accounting has a lot of rules. And I just wanted to stay out of trouble with the government too. Became a CFO of a public company. So most of my background is accounting and finance that way. But I had an issue. And it was an issue that my father had given me or passed down or taught me. It's not really a genetic thing, but it's more of a generational thing as I look at it, that we had this habit of being annoyed, and then we'd have this angry flash. And I realized, I tried to drill it down several times, Don, and I finally got down to that I was annoyed at what other people were doing. Yeah. And it was totally out of my control, but I was annoyed. And when I stopped being annoyed at what other people were doing, then it was easier to find something else to do and to be able to stop that whole rhythm of getting angry. And so try to overcome anger for a long time in my adult life. It took me until about age 35 to stop blaming my father. He was dead 7 years by the time I stopped blaming him. I mean, poor guy, he's not even around to defend himself. And I can't even sit down and talk with him. But I realized that, I'm responsible for my own stuff. And I think that coming to that realization was really one of those turning points that has really helped me in my life.
So let me ask you a question. And I've heard this, and I've kind of argued with this topic, myself, because my brother falls in this category. There's a lot of stuff that he does now, and our father has passed, and he blames our dad for it. And I kind of agree, but at some point, like you said, you're still doing it, and it's wrong, and you're still blaming a guy that's dead, but you're still doing it. But let me ask you this, and I've heard some studies about this. They say that, our traumas from way back kind of go down and get passed down. And I've heard that, if hereditary, if people in your genetic line was an alcoholic, it increases that you'll fall in that line and so forth. So do you think that some of this stuff is passed down through genetics too?
Yeah, no, I don't, Don. And
okay.
I'm saying it's generational because it is maybe a nuance of a grandfather or a great-grandfather that was passed down because our parents only teach us what they learned.
Right.
And we only teach our children what we learned. And so without any education, I think it's an educational issue, number one. And then taking responsibility. I've got a little... Excuse me. I've got a walking stick that I found a few days ago when I was out walking. One side of it's really smooth, and you put your hand on it and everything. It's about 3.5 feet tall, just normal size for walking stick. Then the other side has some points on it. It's kind of got some little knots on this side. So I call this my naughty side of the stick, and this is my nice side of the stick. Kind of like Santa Claus got a stick like that.
Yeah.
You didn't know that, Don. I know that's where your presents come from. You got it.
Yep.
You get the idea. I've realized, Don, that this angry culture that I was raised in has the put downs. It has the sarcasm. It has really high competition, aggressive competition.
It does.
It'll walk over you when you're talking, and they don't care. And it's just that type of culture. It's got the vocabulary, it's got humor, that's all angry. And it's just a culture all by itself. What I realized was that if I blamed someone, I don't have to move anywhere on the stick. I don't have to toward the nice or not toward angry. If I blame someone, it's their fault. Go check with them because it's their fault, and I don't have to move. I don't have to become more angry, or I don't have to become more loving. But when you have that self-actualization moment for yourself, when you've got that moment, you realize that, oh, I realize where I'm at on the stick. I've got those three choices. Stay the same, keep blaming everybody, become more angry, or become more nice. And I realized that I wanted to be more loving, so I had to learn the languages of love. I had to learn all the humor of love, the softness of love. I had to learn all that because I was not taught it as a child. One of those turning points for me, Don, was about 15 years ago. I was single. I believe that this anger, that problem that I had, was contributory to the demise of my first marriage. After eight kids and 23 and a half years, my wife decided she wanted to do something else. And so I had primary custody of the children, 5 children left in the home. And while I've got that primary custody, on the weekends that she had the children, I do what I call destination dating. I did that for about a year and a half, traveled all over the United States and then into Mexico a little bit for this destination dating. I was looking for love in all the wrong places. It just wasn't happening. So single here. Now my sister calls me up and she says, I have a neighbor I want to introduce to you. And she was 7 hours away, Don. I said, you know what? I don't want to travel anymore. I don't want to travel for romance anymore. And I'm number 10 of 11 children. And you got to do what big sister says. I didn't have much say. In fact, in the day, Don, I was the remote control.
Yeah.
Whatever my brothers or sisters would tell me, you go up to the TV and you turn that knob and you change the channel to what they wanted to watch. Yeah. I was the human remote control. That was it. So I had to do what they did. So my sister says, I said, I don't want to do that. She says, oh, come on. And you got to do what they say. So I said, okay, I'll email her. What kind of relationship can you develop in email? I didn't think it would amount to much, but she was actually a really good writer. And so about the 4th or 5th time that we have this exchange, this email exchange, I get up the courage to ask, well, how many times have you been married? And she writes back, counting the 5 that are buried in the backyard. Just like that, it cracked me up. I said, I've got a live wire here. I got somebody that's got a sense of humor and they some personality. I said, this might be worth pursuing. So I pursued a little bit more, and then I decided to move up where my sister was. And then we got serious, and now it's time for big brother approval. Number 10 of 11, you always have to have that too. Yep. So I took this woman north, 300 miles north of my brother's house. First thing that happened, we went in the door. My sister-in-law pulls her aside and said, the only emotion that the Zolman family learned growing up was anger. At first I denied it. I said, and it made me mad. I thought, I've been busted. I was just at ratifying what my sister-in-law said, just confirming that we were an angry bunch. And from that point, I realized I've got an opportunity here, Don, to either change this, or keep it the same. I can make a change and just change that perception of the Zolman family from here on out. And I thought, so I started reading the color code. And I started reading the 5 love languages. And I really liked the 5 love languages because they reconcile to the life of Jesus Christ. That's what Dr. Chapman, Gary Chapman, he's a reverend, a pastor of his church. And he said that they follow the life of Jesus Christ. I was Christian, I still am, and I wanted to follow in that way. I thought, if that's the way that's going to help me move in that direction, also at the same time learn love, then I'm on board. I didn't get it. From where I came from, it was just so hard. Dr. Chapman says, Don, if I guess what your love language is, and if I cater to that, you and I are going to be buddies. I'm a bad guesser. And it wasn't happening so far in my life up until that time. How could I expect it to happen then? That didn't work for me. It just wasn't working.
Yeah.
So the second thing that Dr. Chapman had Don, was that, well, if I take this survey, then I can find out what my love language is. Well, what am I supposed to do with that? Advertise? Hello, Don. I'm gifts. What do you have for me today? I mean, it's just awkward. Or I could create a button and put it on my chest. Say, gifts is my love language. What can you give me? I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous, really bordering on awkward. Just wasn't working for me. So I had an idea that even as dysfunctional as our family was growing up, we liked games. And games really brought us together as a family. There was still all the smack talk. There was still all the put downs. There was still all the aggressive competition and the strategy. There were all those angry attributes, but it brought us together. So I thought, wonder if I could make this a game. So I contacted Dr. Chapman and said, are you licensing those little pictures, those little icons that you have for each one of the love languages? And his attorney wrote back and said, no, we're not doing that right now. Well, frankly, I was grateful. They were dated and I didn't really want to use them anyway. So I went to an attorney in my town, a copyright intellectual property attorney. He said this, said that theory, like the love language theory, is not copyrightable. Application is. So they weren't doing it as a game. So it really kind of gave me permission that I could make my own icons and make it into a game. So that's what I did. I created a cube that has all the icons on it. There you can see two hands touching. That's for touch.
Yep.
There's a hand holding a gift. That's for gifts. A hand holding an hourglass. That's for time. A hand holding a platter. That would be for service. And then you've got two hands put together to create a heart with a little conversation fly out from that heart, meaning the words from the heart. And that's for words. That's for words, right? So there's 5 love languages, 6 sides on the cube. The last side I created was surprise me. So there's just 2 instructions, Don. You roll the cube every day. Whatever it lands on, that's the love language that you practice giving away all day that day. All day to everyone. Not just your significant other, everyone. Remember, I'm single when I create this. I didn't have a significant other at the time. So giving this away all day to everyone was perfect for me. Remember, I wanted to replace that behavior of stacking annoyances and becoming angry. What I remember from that time is that I was looking at people and saying, what's wrong with that person? Why can't they do anything right? And it was critical, and it was that's the question. What's wrong with them? Now, by rolling the die, I'm watching for quite the opposite. I really believe that people are 80 to 90% mostly good, maybe 10 to 20%. They've got faults, they've got weaknesses, they've got this and that, but they're mostly good. So now I'm focusing on that larger part, the good part, and saying, what's right about that person? What can I love about that person? And life's a whole lot happier with that, with these new eyes.
So it's funny that the dice that you held up, the first one that you just showed, happened to be my love language.
The touch?
Yep. So physical touch was mine, and the reason why I know that is I'm part of a group therapy that I joined. Mm-hmm. About a month ago. We covered this, and we all had to take that little assessment test that you were talking about. So we discovered what our love language was and a few other things, and that was my primary one was physical touch. So when you started talking about it, I knew where you were going with it and what you were saying, and it is true. So when you read the questions that they ask, you kind of get a in-depth look at yourself. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know where the therapy was going at this. It was like, man, another quiz, because they're kind of odd questions. And, you're like, well, yeah, okay. And then afterwards, it gives you what you are, physical touch, and then you read what physical touch characteristics are. And you're like, yeah, that does kind of fit me. You know, the scary part about that is when you start putting these pieces together, it starts pulling a piece of the curtain behind, the layers of your, like an onion. You start peeling those layers back of who you really are, not the front, not the Facebook page cover, the real you. And yeah, so I think it's really cool that you were able to take something like that and make it a game that's creating a very valuable lesson that a lot of people don't know nothing about, because until I joined that therapy, I didn't know nothing about love languages.
Thank you, Don. I really am trying to simplify this, because for me, coming from where I came from, it was very difficult. So now what happened with me is now as I roll the die over a 30-day period, you're going to roll all 5 love languages, and you're going to be giving away all 5 love languages so that you know all 5 love languages. You'll become what I like to call, Don, a love language linguist. Sexy title. I know you want that. You want to put that on your resume. When you go to that employer, they're going to say, what the heck is a love language linguist? You're going to say, I just love people. That employer wants their customers loved, and they want a loving environment within the workplace. Those 2 things alone should raise your resume to the very top.
Yeah.
Those employers want that. Second thing that happens, though, is that by learning all 5 love languages to give it away, now it's so much easier to see it when it's coming your way. Throughout my life, Don, I know that I've missed a lot of people that were loving on me. I just didn't see it. I said, oh, that's nice, but it's not what I like. And it doesn't matter if it's what you like. The whole idea is that if they're loving on you, respond back in love. This gives you the eyes, the peripheral vision to be able to do that.
Yeah. And that was the other thing too that I have learned in that group therapy is the counter to your love language is the shields that we put up to protect ourselves. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, just because we have a love language and we know what we love and what we like, sometimes we put those shields up and it prevents us from letting in. We even block what we love and what we like to protect us from getting hurt. And that's where the things get difficult and it gets hard. For me, one of those things that I've had a hard time with wasn't so much the love part. It was I beat myself up so hard that just somebody telling me I've done a good job made me feel weird. Mm-hmm. I couldn't even accept, somebody saying good job. Hey, I really appreciate what you did. Even the simple thank you for your service. I just hated when people came up to me and said that because I just felt awkward.
You wanted a hug instead.
Yeah, I guess, but I think I would have rather had that.
There you go. Just tell them, bring it in. Come on in. You got to take a little proactive approach there, Don. Tell them what you like. Come on, bring it in.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. But yeah, I think the love language part of this is it was a fun part of the therapy that I went through too, because it tells a lot about yourself and when you know what you like, and again, especially when you're married and you know what your partner's love language is, because if I could go back and have my wife take that test 20 years ago, I mean, we've been married now for 29 years, but if I could have her take that test 20 years ago, I would probably know that I probably did a lot of things wrong, because now that we've been married for 29 years, I still don't know what her love language is.
So, Don, let me just interject there. So as you're rolling the die over that 30-day period, I've rolled it. Actually, I've had that copyright since 2017. I just wrote the book this year about it because, and that was on the advice of a health care specialist, a mental health specialist that said, you really need a manual with this die to be able to help people know what to do. And so as you're rolling the die, what you're watching for is when they light up.
Yeah.
And that's the whole key, is that you're trying to help people have a better day. You're trying to help make their day the best day possible. And when they come back to it at the end of the day, they'll come back to that event or that kindness that you gave, say that was the best part of my day. You're not really looking for a pat on the back, but you're hoping that you can make people's day so that eventually they might be saying that about you. If they say that about you, they're spreading that love also to their circles of influence, and they're helping other people have a better day. Contrast that with anger. You send anger out, make someone miserable, they're also going to tell everybody around them how miserable you are, and they're going to have also a miserable day. Yeah. Misery loves that company, but love's a better way. It really is a lot better way. It brings that satisfaction to you. The love giver brings that back to you, so that you're not expecting anything when you send it out, but you're trusting the laws of the universe, like the law of the harvest, like karma, like the law of attraction, whatever you want to call it. There are laws of the universe. Polarity is another law of the universe, that whatever you send out is going to come back to you eventually. It may not, most likely is not going to come back that day, but just send it out. Quit worrying about, oh, I don't feel loved. And the worst part, the thing about the Dr. Chapman suggesting that you tell one another your love language, I'm kind of torn between that, because if you tell someone and then it comes to the point, well, I told you how to love me and you're not, how come you're not doing it? You come to that pity party. Just absolutely avoid the pity party and train yourself, and then train the people around you, your family, and then train your community, and then train your city, train the nation, train the world, that you send it out without any regard of it coming back, and watch for it. Just watch for people to light up all day long.
And I like to have the word choice you just used, because I think that's important too, is train. And the reason why I say that is the group therapy that I'm a part of is they take a similar approach to the way the VA does it, that they just kind of relate it in a different way. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like the way the VA did it. Even though the material I'm getting is the same way, it's related to me in a different way. And like they told me, dealing with the stuff isn't a matter of being smart or unsmart. It's trained or untrained. You lose your temper over a situation, and you have that eruption, and you just take off and lose control. Well, that's an emotion that you were untrained on how to deal with. It's okay to be upset, but when you lose control of it, that's because you weren't trained on how to control it. Mm-hmm. And so, just like you said, train everybody, train the nation, and that's exactly what it is. And I kind of feel that, like what you were talking about earlier, that's kind of how we've gotten to where we are now, is these apps and social media and the TV has trained our kids, the streets, to act a certain way, and they're acting in the way that they've been trained.
They've been trained to look at the negative. Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely agree with that, Don, that if we can undo that, unlearn that sort of thing. And that's really what my whole mission for myself was. And it worked so well. I was amazed. It was really a miracle that just by turning my head and watching for things that were right about people versus watching what was wrong for people, doing that consistently for 30 days, I was over it. I stopped being annoyed at what other people. It's not in my lane.
Yeah.
Just they're in their own lane. They make their own choices. That is their life. If they want to do that, sometimes I say, "You're really going to do that?" And it just you can challenge them a little bit, but you can't give them advice. Just spit it out. You can't do that. You can ask permission, and if they grant permission, then you can give advice. Or if they ask for advice, then you have an opportunity to give advice too. But
Yep.
stay in your lane. It's just
Yep.
stay in your lane is the best thing. The second thing about this, Don, that it was so magnificent for me, and it can be for others too, is I've thought a lot about post-traumatic stress and just that whole disorder of that PTSD. And if it's from an event that keeps recurring in your mind. And if you can stop that record from keep going and start doing something, get a replacement behavior, get replacement thoughts that way. You want to build those replacement experiences. This is a great way to do that. And I really believe that by doing these loving acts, that you'll get these loving things coming back to you. And that those will be soothing, really very soothing for those PTSD moments that soldiers really might have. And I really want to focus on that. I think that it's really an important aspect of this whole idea that you can change the mindset. For me, what happened, instead of being annoyed, now it's stacking kindness on top of kindness, on top of kindness, on top of kindness. And you do that by learning these basics, the basics of kindness. And by stacking these basics of kindness, you get to the higher laws of love. Higher laws meaning like intimacy, like charity, like compassion, like mercy, like empathy, like forgiveness.
Yeah.
Just think of it, Don. If you're insulting, and then asking for forgiveness, what's the chances? It's probably you're not going to get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just stack the kindnesses, just like you might stack annoyances, stack the kindnesses and get to those higher laws of love. This is a better plan of action.
And the other thing too, I kind of agree with is it's not a contest. It's you live your life, and I stay out of other people's business. I'm doing what feels right for me, and like I tell everybody, I base my decisions on what allows me to put my head on my pillow at the end of the night. If I can live with what I decided to do, then that's what was right for me. I am not going to make those decisions for somebody else, right? So if I'm doing this and I'm stacking kindness on top of kindness, that's not in the hopes that I'm going to get somebody to do it back for me. I'm doing it because those are the right choices for me. This is how I want to live my life. This is I wanting me to get the hatred out of my heart. And I didn't really think about this, but it kind of goes back to something that I was feeling when I got out of the military. There was a buddy of mine that he wanted so bad for me to fill out an application to work at the federal prison with him. He was ex-military. He'd been there for 20 years. And I just kept telling him, look, I have seen enough horrible crap. I don't really want to work in that environment anymore. And he kept pushing and kept pushing and kept pushing. And so to satisfy him, I went and submitted an application. I'm telling you, I would not have hired myself with that application that I put in. I mean, I messed it up. I gave myself a dishonorable discharge, and I did not want a phone call back, and I never got one. But I satisfied the requirement, and I submitted an application. But it was because I didn't want to deal with those types of life anymore. I didn't want to go to Walmart and see a guy that just got out of the prison that I worked at and know all the dirt about him, that living in the small little town that I lived in. And I didn't want to see that stuff anymore. So I do get the benefits of replacing the negative from our past and starting a new leaf and stacking the kindness, like you were just saying, how it would help with changing the trend. Veterans have a tendency to isolate and deal with things with anger and aggression. And if you can change those by rolling a dice and forcing yourself to leave your house and do things in the exact opposite of aggression, then you have taken exactly the main characteristics of PTSD, the main symptoms, and done a 180.
Yeah. Another thing that really works for PTSD, and I really have had some of that in my own life as well, more from my childhood. It was a PTSD from my childhood and those traumatic experiences of my childhood than anything else. But one of those things is that uh, as I'm working toward trying to get that different mindset, I'm if I'm ever down and out, what I realized is that there's a lot of people that are also down and out. If I can find just one person that seems like they might be just a little lower than I was, maybe I could put a hand out and lift them up,
Yeah.
make their day, as we're talking about. And in the process of making their day, I get that satisfaction of helping them on their way. I think that you're spot on, Don, when you say if people just get up out of the chair and go out, quit waiting in your chair for love to come to you. Quit it.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Nope.
Start sending it out. And that's the whole idea of this, is that you got to get up out of that chair and you got to send it out. Why you're sending it out is when you're going to find it. There's a great classic movie called The Sound of Music, where Rolf is on the ground. He's singing to the Von Trapp sister, or the oldest daughter, in the second story. And one of the lyrics says, "Love in the heart wasn't put there to stay. Love isn't love till it's given away." That's what we're talking about. That if you want to create love in your own life, you got to give it away. It helps other people and it'll help you too at the same time.
Yeah.
That's really the only way that you're going to get and you're going to feel that love, is by giving it away. Quit waiting, sitting on your haunches, waiting for it. It's not going to come to you. The other thing is that I like to compare this to a magnifying glass. Whatever you magnify is going to grow larger.
Yeah.
Why in anybody's right mind would they look at the faults of another and make it bigger? Why would they magnify that? That has two problems. It makes that person feel bad. And guess what? That's a boomerang coming right back at you. And when it comes back at you, it's going to have the velocity, because of gravity, of going up and then coming back down. It's going to have the gravity force with it, and it's going to come back 10 times worse. They're going to look at your faults. Who wants that? Why would you want that? So send it out, watching for the good parts of people, and hopefully they'll look at your good parts as well.
Yeah, I agree. And that's something a lot of people don't understand, is when you're out there magnifying those and all you're doing is making up for your own insecurities, that's a false sense that you're getting. You didn't fix your insecurities. You covered them up with a little bit of dirt, and they're going to get shown again, just like you said. When somebody comes back with their magnifying glass, it's going to scrape that dirt across, and it's going to be blazed out there for everybody else to see.
It's going to be ugly, yeah. And when you put people down just to elevate yourself, it's never going to work. Never.
No. Because you that time would be better spent fixing your insecurities than it would be magnifying somebody else's. Yeah. It's the human race is really we're such crazy critters, because we're definitely a tribal group. We don't do well by ourselves.
No.
But when you put us in a big group, we don't do well either. We have to be within like a little tribe, and then we have to be talking about this tribe and that tribe. We're the one thing that the Joe Rogan show, I think it was, that he always says when they talk about, is there other life outside? If there was aliens, why would they be looking at us? And Joe Rogan always says, why wouldn't they be interested in us? He said, we're humans and we still study ants. He said, they're so fascinating. He said, we're smarter than they are, but they're still fascinating. We study them. We put them in cages and sell them as toys, and the kids watch them. He said, if there's aliens out there, they're watching us. He said, we're fascinating.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'm sure there are. We just, we need to feel it.
Yep, I agree. Well, Paul, tell everybody where they can. I know you got a couple books out there, and tell them about your website. Where can they purchase the books at?
So, got a book that tells all about the role of love, about the cube itself, and then what else I've got, Don, is I've got a journal that you record what you rolled, opportunities you saw to love in that way, and what you did about those opportunities. Becomes a love journal, something that I would have loved to have from my mother or my grandmother or my grandfather. Instead, I got a journal about the weather. The weather 60 years ago. Who cares about what the weather was like 60 years ago? I would have loved to have a love journal. And they can get all that at therolloflove.com, ROLE of love. I did a play on words. You ROLL, the cube outside of you. ROLE is the change within. And this really should change you within. If you work with it, it won't take long that you'll start watching for what's right about people. We really need to get to that part of our society, watch what's good about other people. And focus on helping us, get over the bad that's in ourselves instead of the other way around. I think that we have kind of a society that looks for the bad in others, thinking how good we are. Doesn't work that way. It's not going to heal our society that way. So rolloflove.com, you can get the cube, the book, and the journal for less than one therapy session. It's $29.99. It's a bundle. At that price, it's about 20% off the regular retail price. If you're an Audible person and you listen to podcasts rather than watch them, or you want to read a book rather than hold the book, I do have the Audible version on, and it's on Amazon. But if you go to Amazon and type in Roll of Love, you're going to get love this, love that, love a million things. You don't want to do that. Type in my name, just Paul Zolman, Zolman, and it'll bring it right up. You can get the Audible version of the book, and then or the Kindle version of the book as well. They do not have on Amazon the cube, though. You'll have to go to my website for the cube.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody, I'm going to tell you the other thing too. If you haven't done it, take that assessment and find out what your love language is, and I think you will be very fascinated, and I think you will definitely go to his website afterwards and purchase the book, because you are going to be amazed at how much that test knows you and how much it reveals about yourself. So you will see that everything that Paul has said today is exactly backed by science and well used. So, Paul, I appreciate you coming on and sharing this, and I love what you did with the dice and the idea behind it, and the way you put this together. I think that is amazing.
Thank you, Don. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and nice having this conversation. It really is a conversation I hope to have all around the world.
Absolutely. It's a conversation we need to have around the world. So, and I'm going to share this with that group therapy that I'm in, and because that's a topic that we spend a lot of time on, and that this may be something that they can use in that therapy as well. It's might be a good practical exercise for us to use and talk about.
So this really helps between therapy sessions too. You're not having therapy every day. This is an everyday thing that you're focusing on love. So absolutely, love to participate there.
Yep, absolutely. So I will definitely let them. If you don't mind holding fast, we'll go and throw the exit video out. Y'all stay tuned. We have another show tomorrow, and then I think after that it will be Friday, and then back to our regular schedule next week. So I appreciate all of y'all for listening. Paul, thank you for coming on, and the rest of you guys be safe. See y'all tomorrow.